Good evening, everyone, and welcome to our panel discussion on media democracy, the media landscape. We intend to discuss today's evolving media landscape with corporate consolidation, the emergence of online news sites, alternatives to the mainstream media, and questions of censorship. I am Peggy Leech, President of the League of Women Voters of Boulder County. The League is co-sponsoring this event with the Rocky Mountain Peace and Justice Center, represented this evening by Carolyn Beninsky. It was actually her idea, and we've been working together on it for 2 or 3 months. First, I would like to introduce the panelists, or I guess I'll just mention who they are, and they'll come up one at a time later, and thank them for their participation in tonight's discussion. So I will be starting first, and I will also be the facilitator for the discussion. And I'll be followed by Maeve Conran from KGNU Community Radio, Matt Cortina from the Boulder Weekly, Quentin Young from the Boulder Daily Camera, Dana Caulfield, the Colorado Sun, Nathan Schneider, Department of Media Studies here at CU Boulder, Kim Clemenson, Public News Service, and finally Carolyn Beninsky, Rocky Mountain Peace and Justice Center. The League is a political organization, but we are nonpartisan, meaning we never support candidates or political parties. We do study issues and come to consensus, and we can then take positions on various legislation and issues that come up. Our core value is making democracy work for all by empowering voters and defending democracy. We envision a democracy where every person has the desire, the right, the knowledge, and the confidence to participate. The media has tremendous influence on whether people have a desire to participate in our democracy, just in the way they can foster a sense of community, or outrage, or cynicism. They certainly have a role in whether people have the knowledge and therefore the confidence to participate. When we talk about the evolving media landscape, it seems like we first need to define media. So I am mostly talking about the press and media outlets such as television, radio, print journalism, and online news services. Some of these media outlets have multiple platforms where they share the news, including their websites, Facebook, and other social media, email subscriptions, and the like. We can also break it down into international, national, state, and local news. We have several examples of state and local news outlets represented on the panel tonight, and they each have their own methods of distributing the news. Also, when I am talking about the media tonight, I am talking about coverage of political issues, since this is media and democracy. So elections, legislation, issues such as healthcare, the environment, the Supreme Court, investigations, among others. Thinking about the national media, cable news channels come to mind as one of the biggest changes in the last 20 or 30 years. They need to be on the air 24/7, and they need to be entertaining to get the good ratings. So unbiased news suffers in this format. Part of getting the good ratings is to please their audiences. So we have Fox News concentrating on issues from the conservative point of view, and MSNBC on a liberal point of view. I only subscribe to basic cable, so I don't see these channels much, but when I do, I am struck by how biased their coverage is. I often watch the NewsHour on PBS, which is much better, but still somewhat biased in my opinion. They often try to get at least 2 speakers on a subject, which I appreciate. If I want an unfiltered view of the State of the Union address or a Senate committee hearing, I will watch C-SPAN. But we as Americans mostly don't have time to watch events in depth. So we often have to depend on the news media to summarize for us. It is important in my mind to recognize various biases and try to listen to varying viewpoints. On the state and local level, I mostly think about newspapers and radio, and a little bit about television, especially public television, such as PBS or Channel 8. I recently saw a panel on PBS Channel 12 discussing the Denver mayoral race, and how it seemed like there had not been much coverage of that, and many voters are unfamiliar with the challengers to Michael Hancock. One of their conclusions was that with the demise of the Rocky Mountain News and the severe downsizing of the Denver Post, coverage of the Denver mayoral race was suffering. On the other hand, I saw a recent article by Jason Salzman with Colorado Times Recorder titled, "Once an Endangered Species, Journalists Make a Miraculous Comeback at the Colorado Capitol." And I would say that I have definitely noticed that, and I appreciate it. There was also some concern expressed in the article that the extra concentration at the Capitol might be a detriment to other beats, such as City Hall, the public schools, higher education, the police, and more. On both a state and local level, I appreciate the coverage that is given to money in politics. Much of this information is available to all of us, but it is very helpful to have someone pull the information together and present it to the public. And there is some information that needs some serious digging to discover. This can be very important information, and I usually factor it in when deciding how to think about candidates or issues. One of the factors in the changing media landscape is corporate consolidation. For one thing, this gets a lot of our media under only one or two mega groups, and it can lead to bias or censorship. For another thing, the almighty dollar is often more important in the corporate world than the integrity of the news coverage. I don't think profit is bad in the news business. After all, I expect reporters and editors to be paid, and there has to be enough money to handle lawsuits, freedom of information requests, and the many expenses of putting out the news. But when shareholders and profits are more important than the readers, listeners, or viewers, the news suffers, and our newsrooms suffer. Another factor in today's media landscape is the emergence of online news and how to get customers to pay. I currently pay monthly subscriptions or contributions to at least 10 news outlets. Plus, I get access to a couple of others for free by subscribing to their emails or following on Facebook. I see all kinds of headlines in a paragraph or two from some other outlets, like the Washington Post or the Wall Street Journal. After that, they want me to subscribe. It seems like more and more news organizations are setting up that payment system, and I don't blame them, but I can only subscribe to so many. On the topic of censorship, I have mixed feelings, especially about social media. There is a lot of useful information on social media, including stories from the press and from many other organizations, plus just sharing of personal photos, events, etc. There are also those sites that are spewing out hate and inciting violence. How should we handle them? We talk about free speech, but not being able to yell fire in a crowded theater. I am a political junkie, and I find election night to be much more exciting than the Super Bowl. I am also an unaffiliated voter, as I find the tactics of political parties to be very distasteful, and I often feel that the political parties are more interested in which party has power than in what is good for our country. Party over country. I wish our politicians would spend more time finding solutions, even if they are a compromise, and in showing respect to the other side. In some ways, the media makes things worse by making everything into a horse race or a controversy, especially with the advent of cable news. I, as a citizen, am interested in promoting civil conversations in our community and in better developing our listening skills to discover that people with diverse backgrounds can often share common ground. We can also develop a better understanding of the other person's point of view, and whether we end up agreeing or not, at least we can understand. Here are some of the important questions I think need to be addressed in today's society. 1, what is the press these days? Who is qualified to report to us? 2, how much responsibility does the press have to provide fact, analysis, and opinion, and to label them as such? And by the way, I do appreciate hearing and reading other people's opinions, as long as they are not being portrayed as fact. And number 3, can we have an expectation that the news is unbiased and will be accurate or fair? Are there any laws about this, since freedom of the press is guaranteed by the First Amendment? I think one of the most important principles to remember is that just because I saw it on the internet or on TV or radio or in the newspaper doesn't make it true. But I always hope that our journalists follow basic principles to get things right, and I trust some more than others to do that.